All right, aloha everyone, and welcome. We're pleased to have you join us for our 2-day virtual ocean classroom teacher workshop. Today is day 1. So this webinar is hosted by the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary and is in collaboration with the Waikiki Aquarium, Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, and the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa. So I am Cindy Amag-Sarao, one of your hosts for this webinar, and I'm a staff member of the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary, and I'm based on the island of Oahu. I am joined by Alan Tom, the superintendent of the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary based in Kihei, Maui. So just to go over a few GoToWebinar tips, if you guys aren't familiar with it, during the presentation, all attendees will be in listen-only mode. If anyone is having audio problems, normally it can be resolved by checking the audio tab in your control panel. You can see it on the slide currently being shown. You want to be sure you have selected the correct audio output, the computer speakers, headphones, etc. Otherwise, it is likely the bandwidth of your internet connection, which is known to cause delays, audio and/or video connection errors. So you're welcome to type questions for the presenters into the questions box in your control panel, which is usually found on the right hand of your screen. Due to limited time, we'll not be doing a live question and answers after each presenter. Instead, questions will be saved and shared with the presenters, and their responses will be emailed out to the email address that you registered with. Also in your control panel, you'll find handouts provided by the presenters that are available for you to view and download. We are recording both teacher workshop days and will house it on our websites in the future. So now I will pass it on to Alan.
So aloha everybody, calling you from Maui today. My name is Alan Tom. I'm the superintendent of the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale Sanctuary, and I just wanted to show you the light blue areas is where the boundary of the sanctuary is located. You can see we don't have a lot of staff, and Cindy actually covers 2 islands. She covers Oahu and the Big Island. And actually, because we are a national marine sanctuary, we are in the ocean, and a lot of people don't even know the sanctuary exists, even though we've been here 27 years. And that's why it's very important for us to partner with a lot of very important institutions like the Waikiki Aquarium to help us get our message out. And it's also important to have friends in high places, such as our Congressman, who will be joining us in just a bit. So I am very pleased to let you know we have 2 very quick guest speakers who want to say a few words of aloha before we get started. And so I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Dr. Andrew Rossiter, head of the Waikiki Aquarium, and that's a picture of me. Oh, there's Andy. Okay, so Dr. Rossiter is calling in from Waikiki. He has been a great collaborator over the years, helped us get our message of conservation out to the general public. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Rossiter. Andy?
Thank you, Alan, for that introduction, and thanks to Cindy for explaining everybody who's involved in this wonderful collaborative effort. As Alan noted, we and his organization have collaborated over many, many years on various aspects of marine education and conservation. And I think that's one of the directions that the aquarium should be pursuing, and pursuing with great zeal. In this day and age, aquariums should not be just for entertainment. They must address education, research, and conservation. And that's a direction that we are following through on. A little bit about the aquarium itself. It's, as you might guess, located in Waikiki. It's 117 years old this coming Friday, and that makes it the 2nd oldest public aquarium in the United States. So it's really a heritage institution with a very, very storied past. What we focus on here are mainly South Pacific animals to educate visitors and locals about the amazing diversity of marine life found around these islands. We have a wonderful education program. We get roughly 30,000 school children through annually on our education programs. Many of these are from Title I schools who are unable to pay the bus fare to get here, entry fee, or meals. And thankfully, we've been able to locate a very generous donor that allows us to bring in kids from outlying Title I schools free of charge. We cover their bus fare, we cover a meal while they're here, and of course they get free entry. And hopefully they go home wanting to be the next Jacques Cousteau. So you have a wonderful program ahead of you today. I've looked through the agenda. I'll be checking in on some of them throughout the day because there really is a fascinating array of topics there. And from me personally, thanks to everything you do as teachers, especially in this environment. Your input, both now and in the future, is critical to the folks of Hawaii. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Alan.
Mahalo, Andy, as always. Great to see you, and always a pleasure to visit the Waikiki Aquarium. So thank you, Andy, for joining us. I'd like to introduce our next guest presenter. So pleased that he can be with us. He has been a huge supporter of the National Marine Sanctuary Program. His district includes Metropolitan Honolulu on the island of Oahu, as well as, I believe, Papahanaumokuakea, the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And this congressman is one of the few politicians who's actually been out to Papahanaumokuakea, and he has been, like I said, an advocate for the marine environment and a great supporter of my programs, as well as many other programs in the state of Hawaii that deal with the environment. I'd like to welcome Congressman Ed Case, a local boy from the Big Island. He is joining us today. Congressman, are you there?
Aloha, Ed. We do hear your audio currently.
I know, I'm trying to get my webcam on.
No problem. Perfect.
I was trying to get in and then I ungot myself in, so apologies for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you, so feel free to speak away.
Oh, I see. So you introduced me while I was trying to get back on. Appreciate that.
You know, you missed all the great things I said about you, Congressman. So I would just say, you know, the fact that you're here says a lot about your character. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry about the hassles getting on. And first of all, aloha to everybody. Welcome from Washington, D.C. I'm actually in my office in Washington, D.C. on a quite cold and pretty dreary day here today. We are 10 weeks into the new Congress. Of course, a very, very momentous time for our country on many different levels, a very difficult time, in all honesty. Not only are we continuing to navigate COVID-19 through the second terrible and tragic year, but here in Congress, we are in a new Congress, a new 2-year Congress, so things are starting all over again. Many of the issues, challenges are the same as they were, some new challenges along the way, and of course, we also are dealing with a new administration, which is getting its feet wet in a brand new structure here, and so it's a very, very full time for me, but it's such a nice opportunity for me to spend just a few minutes with you. And the first thing I want to do to all of the teachers out there, especially, is to just simply thank you for your incredible service through a very, very difficult year. It is a monument to, you know, your dedication that our children have been able to continue in some way, shape, or form their education during a pandemic, a true worldwide pandemic. And so I just really appreciate that. I'm also really grateful to thank NOAA again and Alan, who I've worked with for many years. Not the last time we saw each other, but certainly one of the most memorable times was on Maui, rebuilding one of the ancient fish ponds there. It was a tough job I had to do that day to get out there with him and a whole bunch of folks in the community and help out from that perspective. And Waikiki Aquarium, a very special aloha to you. When I was growing up on the Big Island in Hilo, we had a program where we would invite folks to come and speak in Hilo that didn't really have the access that Honolulu did. And one of my most memorable ones was Spencer Tinker, who was then the very long time chair of the Waikiki Aquarium, who came over and really educated many of us in the wonders of the ocean. This was when I was a very young child. And so you can see how just a really good teacher, mentor, somebody that talks to you about the ocean can make a lifelong difference. And so thank you so much again, first of all. I don't think I have to tell anybody on this call how important our oceans are to life as we know it on this planet, life as it exists on this planet. And I hope and believe that I don't need to tell everybody on this phone call that our oceans are, as what I always say, are in mortal danger right now. They have so many challenges facing them on so many levels. Of course, climate change is a major challenge facing our oceans. It cuts across all of the rest of the challenges. We have the problem of overfishing and over-extraction, unsustainable use of our oceans. We have the problem of pollution of our oceans from land-based sources. And finally, we have the problem of trash that is overwhelming our oceans. Finally, I'll tell you one other problem, and that also translates across the board, and that is the problem of ignorance of the threats facing our oceans. Because although it's easy to see sometimes the pollution over our major cities and to understand the impacts of climate change, when we can graphically see, glaciers disappearing and icebergs melting and sea levels rising, where we can see the effects of man's unsustainable uses of both our air and our land, it's harder to see in our oceans. And as a result, because it's harder to see, it's easier to ignore. And that's exactly what has been happening. And we are engaged in all kinds of efforts across our globe from folks that care about our oceans, from international oceans systems and organizations that are dedicated to international solutions, because we cannot solve the problems of our oceans simply by countries doing this or by states doing that. It has to be a unified effort. The ocean doesn't much care about whose country it is or whose state it is. For that matter, in Congress here, we are dealing with many of these issues. I serve here in Congress on the House Appropriations Committee, which funds our federal efforts. I'm on the subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, and Science, which oversees NOAA and funds NOAA. And certainly I'm focused on NOAA's great efforts in oceans and trying to increase that funding, that scope. As well as on the House Natural Resources, which has jurisdiction over our countries, as it's called, natural resources, including our oceans resources, serve on the subcommittee for wider oceans and wildlife. And so we've got our hands full right here in Washington, but I would argue that the major issue that we can do something about is to teach the next generations the importance of our oceans and our own personal kuleana for the issues that the oceans face, as well as the solutions from the perspective of the oceans. And that teaching doesn't happen automatically. Some of us, and I include myself as one of those lucky people, literally grew up in the oceans. So nobody really had to teach me too much about the oceans. I was in it when I was, very young, and I've been in it my whole life. And so for me, there's an appreciation for the oceans that came to me from my parents, from my community, from my own uses. But I suspect that I am the real exception from that perspective, and that most of us throughout this, world of 7 billion plus have to learn about the oceans. It's not something that happens just as a matter of course. And the more we learn, the less we can be ignorant, the more we can be committed to the progress of our oceans. And that's where you come in. Because it's so critical that we reach our children early on in their lives about the importance of our oceans, tell the stories of the oceans from a scientific perspective, the oceans from an ecosystem perspective, the oceans from a use perspective, and the wise uses of the oceans. For example, the Native Hawaiians who use the oceans in a very sustainable way that was an existential requirement. All of these stories can be told. All of these bits of information can be provided, and they add up, I think, to real progress across the board in terms of the challenges that we face with our oceans, and that's your job. And so that's where things come in. You know, I saw this in action. Interestingly, during my first service in Congress, I was so fortunate to go out to what was then called the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands on the research vessel, the NOAA ship Hi'i'alakai. And the real purpose of that trip was to teach teachers how to teach about the oceans by giving them the experiences with the oceans, the pure oceans, the oceans that were pristine, pretty much untouched by humankind. And I spent a wonderful 6 days with that group of teachers who I think to this day would consider themselves equally lucky, listening to them, talking with them, and watching them formulate their lesson plans from their own experiences on that ship. Corals, fish, frigate birds, monk seals, interactions with fishing vessels, effects of climate change, sea level rise, eroding reefs. All of that found their way into their lessons. And I think that since that happened, which was somewhere around 15 years ago, generations, I think, of students have benefited from the experience of those teachers who came back with a renewed commitment to the oceans of our world. That turned into a pursuit of the designation as Papahanaumokuakea, which exists to this day, in which we're trying to transition from a national monument, which is at least arguably subject to reversal by any president, to a national sanctuary, which is set in stone, so to speak. And so I just wanted to spend the time with you today to tell you that what you're doing now is so critical to our oceans. What you do is gonna make a difference, and what you do to try to educate the next generations, as we were educated about the oceans, is absolutely indispensable to develop that next generation of people that care about our oceans, whether they are teachers themselves or politicians or NGO supervisors or wherever that, or scientists, wherever that path may lead, that the oceans be part of the path. So I'm excited about your efforts, and I really want to just thank you for giving me the time to share my own thoughts about our oceans with you, and to know that you have a ready partner in me. And certainly, if you want to work a discussion with me about national oceans policy into your classrooms, as long as I can carve out the time to do that, I'm happy to talk to those next generations and to put my money where my mouth is. So thank you very much, and best wishes to all of you.
So mahalo, Congressman. I know you're busy. I know you have to get back to the Hill and your work, but I do appreciate you coming today. And my favorite story, well, first of all, group who's attending, the Congressman will show up. I can guarantee you that. He has showed up, as he said, at our fish pond. But my favorite story about the Congressman is if he remembers when we went out to French Frigate Shoals and we were walking around and a bird landed on you because you were the highest thing on that island. So again, Congressman, thank you. And I'm going to now proceed and turn it over to Mary Rooney from the Waikiki Aquarium. And she is the education specialist at the aquarium. For those of you who haven't visited the aquarium recently, you should always go check it out. They always have new things. And so Mary, if you can turn on your camera, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mary Roney. I'm the Community Programs Coordinator here at Waikiki Aquarium. I have been working here for a number of years, and when I started here at the aquarium, I thought my real goal or mission was to get everyone who came to the aquarium or came to any of our activities to learn about sea cucumbers and to realize how important they were to the environment and how wonderful they were. And the reason for that is because I felt like sea cucumbers aren't naturally charismatic and they needed someone to speak for them. And when I walked past the seal pool, I'd see these really cute seals, very charismatic, attracted a lot of people naturally. And I thought, oh, that's great. But really, we need to have someone who can speak for animals that are less charismatic. But after working here for a little while, I realized even their neonatal features, their big eyes compared to the size of their head, that we're naturally hardwired as humans when we look at these creatures to say, ah, even they needed a voice. I wasn't here very long when I realized that when kids were doing programs on endangered species, they were doing them on wolves and beluga whales. And here in our own state, we have this incredible animal that's endangered, and the students in Hawaii need to learn about, okay? I think Cindy, so I would like to know a little bit more about the audience out there, and Cindy had a poll. Cindy, do you have a poll so we know who's out there and
Yes, so I'm sorry, Mary. So I am going to currently launch a poll up for all attendees. If you folks can please put in your votes for the next few seconds. So are you a formal educator, K to 5th grade, formal educator 6 to 12, informal educator, student, or a community member? So currently we have around 54% of the attendees voted. Maybe when we get to 60 or 75%, I'll close the poll, and then we'll continue with another poll when Mary is ready. All right, so a bunch of you folks have voted, so I'm gonna close the poll, and then we will share the results. All right, so folks can now see on the screen that around 55% of our attendees are informal educators, and 20% being formal, 13% being community members, 8% formal K to 5, and students 5%. And then Mary, shall I go with the second poll?
Sure. Real quick,
Oh.
just one more poll.
All right, so we're launching the second poll. Simple, do you live in Hawaii? Yes or no? So we'll wait till again around 75% of all attendees have put in their poll. All right, around 70% have filled out the poll. So I am going to close the poll and then also share it. So we have 65% of folks who do not live in Hawaii and 35% who do. So now turning it back to you, Mary.
Okay, well, thank you. That's kind of what I find interesting, that when I started working here, there was so much interest from kids in California and Illinois. I was constantly answering emails and sending little packets of information to kids in other parts of the country. So I do want kids in all parts of the US to know about this endangered species, but I really want kids in Hawaii to learn a little bit more. And these animals do need our help. So first I would like Cindy, okay. So I would like to teach you a little bit about these animals. Is my screen shared, Cindy? Oh, it is? Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so the Hawaiian monk seals, Hawaiian name is Iliaholo Ikauawa, which translates to dog running in the rough seas. When the early Hawaiians first came to Hawaii on their canoes, they came from the South Pacific. They probably had never seen a seal. They came from the tropics, and tropical seals are fairly uncommon. When you think of seals, you think of them in cold water places or temperate places, but you don't tend to think of seals as being in a tropical environment. So it was probably a surprise when they saw a Hawaiian monk seal, and so they named it Ilio, meaning dog, which is something that they did know about. Okay. The other really interesting thing about Hawaiian monk seals is they're endemic. They're found only in Hawaii and nowhere else in the world. And since so many of you are not from Hawaii, I will take a moment to explain and tell you that the Hawaiian Islands that you might know about are what we call the main Hawaiian Islands, but the island chain stretches up another 1,000 miles or so. And these green islands up here, the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, are part of the Papahanao Mokuakea Marine National Monument. And this area is protected. There's very few people. The people up there are often biologists studying the wildlife up there. And the islands, though there are some high islands, are generally low islands and mostly atolls. Okay, but outside this island chain, you won't find Hawaiian monk seals anywhere. About 30% of the population lives in the main Hawaiian Islands. The rest live in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. There are only 1,400 of these left, and that population has remained stable for quite a few years now. Before that, it had declined for many, many years, rebounded up to 1,400, and it stayed about 1,400 for a few years now. This seal is one of 8 species that have been identified by the National Marine Service as at most risk of extinction. So the only good thing about the Hawaiian monk seal being an endangered species is that the federal government has put a lot of effort into helping these seals, creating new habitat for them, intervening when they need intervention, creating seal hospitals and rehabilitation areas, also in conjunction with many other organizations and many volunteers. But because the federal government is involved, as an educator, there is a lot of information out there on Hawaiian monk seals. There's tons of videos, really great websites, and so it's a really interesting animal for you and your students to learn a lot more about. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an overview of Hawaiian monk seals. This is a Hawaiian monk seal we had here at the aquarium. They grow to be about 7 feet long. The females are generally larger than the males. They weigh up to 600 pounds. Our seal here at the aquarium weighs quite a bit less than that, but again, he's a male and the females tend to be larger. If they make it through their first year and their juvenile years up to reproductive age, they can live to be about 25 or 30 years old. Okay. They have 1 pup a year between December and August generally. Because they're tropical seals, their pupping season can really be all year long, but most of the pups are born between December and August. When the pups are born, they're that beautiful black, and the adults are a dark brown or a gray color. The pups are born, they weigh about 30-35 pounds, and they nurse from their mom for about 6 weeks. In that time, they go from 30 pounds to 200 pounds, basically just off the milk that they get from their mother. So they grow enormously, and that is very taxing on the mother seal. So for that 6 weeks, she is feeding a pup. She begins to get very, very hungry, and she will leave quickly when she is in need of food. Probably 2 of the most famous seals in Hawaii are Rocky, who's the mom, and Kaimana, who is her pup. They were born right next door to our aquarium on Waikiki Beach. Kaimana was born on Waikiki Beach, and it was a little bit alarming to have a critically endangered species born on a very, very popular beach. But it also offered a lot of opportunity. Volunteers made sure that they were roped off and kept people away from them. But because this beach is right in front of a high rise, a webcam was attached to the high rise, and scientists actually learned a lot and got to observe a lot from that high vantage point that they had never been able to see in their camps at the islands that they go to up in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and spend summer. So Rocky and Kaimana right here in town offered a learning opportunity for many in the public and scientists. And there's a lot of information on the web, even books have been written about them. And if you want to watch some of the YouTube videos that are still up about Rocky and Kaimana on the beach here, they're great. And I encourage you to look up more information on Rocky and Kaimana. Okay, so as the seal is nursing from its mom, its mom has a few weeks to also try to teach it to hunt. So in the shallow waters, when the seals are small, they use their nose to flip over rocks and they eat what is under the rocks. Things like octopus, reef fish. So the humu humu nuku nuku apu a'a are state fish here in Hawaii. At night, it wedges into the reef, and this would be a perfect target for a seal to flip over a rock and get a fish that was wedged in. They eat crustaceans, crabs, lobster, shrimp, and eels. So we call them generalist feeders because they don't feed on just one type of prey. They feed on a variety of things that live under rocks and in rubbly areas. As the seals grow and get larger, they can start diving deeper. And adult seals have been seen and have been tracked to dive over 1,500 feet deep. They go down to deep water coral beds where there is a fairly thriving fish and invertebrate community, and they can feed down there. Okay. But if you've ever encountered a Hawaiian monk seal, it's probably not in the water. It's probably on a beach. And so why do we think seals come up on beaches? Well, this picture shows one obvious reason: to rest. We think that they spend about 2/3 of their time in the water and maybe about 1/3 on land. They can sleep in the water. They can take short naps, about 20 minutes in caves and whatnot. But really, when they come up on a beach, it's often for rest. Or, as I often ask a kid, why would a seal need to come up on the beach? And the kids know. They know that maybe there's a shark in the water that has chased them out. So maybe they're up on the beach to avoid predators. Another reason that most people don't know about is that seals molt. They have what we call a catastrophic molt once a year. Before they molt, you can see a picture of Maka onauna here, turning a little bit green. They grow algae on their fur, and eventually they shed the top layer of their skin and all of their fur. It takes about 2 weeks, and even though they don't look furry, they really are. They have a very dense fur, so it makes them look sleek like that, but they are furry mammals. You'll have to take my word for it. Okay, and so they molt. Oh, when molting, they're shedding fur, shedding skin, they're kind of smelly, it's taxing on them, so they spend a lot of time up on beaches during this time, okay? And then finally, to have their pups. So if you see a seal on a beach, it's really important that they are not disturbed and left alone, okay? So a really fun game we play with the kids is, we call it the rule of thumb. And if you can stick your thumb out, I'm trying to do it in front of my camera here, but this might be more coordination than I possibly have. And you can cover, like, so I'm covering my glasses maybe, or that fish with my thumb. If you can stick it out and cover the whole seal with one eye closed, then you're probably far enough away. We're assuming that a seal is 7 feet long. And if you're standing on a beach, can close one eye and cover the whole seal with your thumb, then then you're probably far enough away to allow the seal to rest on the beach. Here in Waikiki, volunteers come very quickly and will cone off an area that is when a seal's up on the beach, but on more remote beaches, it's important to know what distance to keep, 150 feet, okay? We also ask when you go to the beach, if you bring a dog or to please keep them on a leash, because dogs have attacked seals, do attack seals, and can also spread disease to seals. So when we think of Hawaiian monk seals, we think of them living in our island chain, but really the main Hawaiian island population and the northwestern Hawaiian island population are fairly distinct. There's not a lot of travel between the areas, and the threats in both of these places are very different. In the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, since this is a marine monument, there aren't a lot of people, but there are a lot of animals, a lot of sharks, a lot of large carnivorous fish like the ulua behind me. And so they face different pressures in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands than they would in the main Hawaiian Islands. Okay. In the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, because there are so many sharks, there's a real problem with predation of the young seals. Remember, from 6 weeks on, these seals are on their own to find all of their food and get away from predators. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. Okay, these sharks and these large fish also provide competition for food, and so it can be very difficult for young seals who aren't great at fishing yet to get enough food. So there are a lot of problems of getting seals to live through the first year of their life. If they make it through their first year and to reproductive age, they have a great chance of surviving to 25 or 30 years old. Okay? Luckily, Keikaiola, which is run by the Marine Mammal Center, opened on the Big Island, and they are helping to rehabilitate a lot of these young seals and juvenile seals when they do get injured or are malnourished. There's also a real problem of entanglement in marine debris. You don't think of islands that don't have people on it living on them as having a problem with marine debris, but there are many ghost derelict fishing gear and ghost nets, just trash in the ocean that collects all along the reefs of these islands and on the beaches of these islands. And when they do this, they also collect animals. Seals go over they're curious by nature to check it out, to look for food, and there are quite a few incidents with Hawaiian monk seals getting trapped in marine debris. So again, NOAA makes a huge effort at removing marine debris. This last year has been a weird year because there were no scientists sent up to the remote islands to remove marine debris or study the seals. But this year, they are planning on sending up groups again. So we'll get more current information on the population up in the Northwest. Okay, and finally, habitat loss is a real problem up there. It's not from encroachment from humans like you see in the main Hawaiian Islands, but habitat loss is a problem because these islands are low-lying atolls. They're subject to storms, erosion, and sea level rise. In 2018, East Island, which is really important to seals, turtles, and seabirds, Hurricane Walaka hit this island and it basically disappeared. It was really worrisome on what would happen to where would the turtles move somewhere else? Would the birds move somewhere else? What would happen? But the good news is I've heard that some sand has started accreting again at East Island and it is starting to reform, but there have been a few years of absolutely no island there, and this is really important habitat. Okay. In the main Hawaiian Islands, our threats are usually anthropomorphic. They have something to do with humans. We have lots of humans in the main Hawaiian Islands, and one of the main problems is fishing gear. We had a couple of seals die recently after drowning in lay nets. People put out nets, didn't check their gear, and remember, these animals are mammals. They need to breathe. They got caught in a net, couldn't get to the surface to get air, and drowned. So really, really sad. We have seals that swallow fishing gear, fishing hooks, because they're looking for food. There's bait on that hook. It looks interesting to a seal as well as a ulua. So they come over and check it out and sometimes swallow these hooks. So this is a real threat to the population in the main Hawaiian Islands. Other threats are trauma. Again, I talked about dogs off leash. We have had, this year we had a dog attack a seal who got sent to Keikaiola on the Big Island. And sadly, we even have humans interact and injure seals. Some believe that the seals are competing in some way, so there have been rewards put out for this seal, for finding the people who injured the seal. Finally, this is a surprise to most people, but disease is a real problem and is killing a lot of our seals. In the last few years, 15 seals have died due to a parasite that they got from cats. It's called toxoplasmosis, and it's one of the biggest threats to the monk seal population in the main Hawaiian Islands. And the interesting thing about this parasite is it can only live, it needs felines, it needs some sort of cat to complete its life cycle. So animals in the, so this parasite couldn't live in Hawaii at all if there weren't cats here. And we know that there are a lot of cats. We have a big feral cat population in the main Hawaiian Islands. So this is a big threat to our seal population. Okay. All right. So now I want to move on over and talk about things that you guys could use in your classrooms or as informal educators could use. So I didn't know what the audience would be, so I prepared some ideas for early elementary all the way through high school. So in early elementary, I often teach young students about what a mammal is, that seals have fur like all mammals. They breathe air like all mammals. They feed milk to their pups, okay, that we've already kind of discussed. Another interesting topic is to teach them the body parts of the seal. So their whiskers are called vibrissae, and they're really important. As we know, seals can dive very deep. They can hunt where it's dark and black, and there's basically no light. So they need to use their whiskers to detect movement, okay? When you look at a seal, you might not see ears, but they have internal ears. With little kids, I usually say ear holes. If you look at the side of their head, you can see a little hole, but they don't have external ear flaps like humans do, okay? No external ear flaps. They can hear, but they have ear holes. They have one adaptation that every ocean-going person in Hawaii wants. Not only do they have nostrils, but they have nostrils that they can open and close. So they can close their nostrils when diving underwater. Body surfing kids, bodyboarding kids, kids that just spend a lot of time in the water all want this adaptation. They want to be able to close their nostrils without using their fingers so they don't get the ocean up their nose, okay? And finally, flippers are used for locomotion. I like to point out here at the aquarium, because we can get very close to our seals, that they have fingernails on those flippers. Their front flippers are used for steering and their back flippers for power. And you can really see that, okay? When you get higher in elementary, animal research projects, there's so much good information out there. I highly recommend that you include Hawaiian monk seals in any of your animal research projects. Endangered Species Day is May 5th. Lots of schools have, you know, celebrations or learning activities around that. Please use Hawaiian monk seals. We have I have a picture of one of the handouts here. I have other things for you guys to use for those types of events that are in the handouts, okay? This is just shows the difference between seals and sea lions, and this is for you to print out if you need it. And finally, it's always great to have a good discussion with your students, and I don't think that there is one picture that has been more exciting or interesting to anyone who's been watching Hawaiian monk seals as this one, which shows a juvenile Hawaiian monk seal with a snake eel hanging out of its nose. Now, the reason this picture is so great is because not even scientists know why juvenile seals are getting eels up their nose. There's a lot of guesses, but there's no one knows for sure. So you can imagine leading a discussion, learning a little bit about the habits of these animals, and imagining why this eel is up this seal's nose. So it is head first, and so maybe when the seal was fishing and turning over rocks, it exposed an eel who was looking for a crack or a crevice and found the nostril of the seal and swam in. That's a possibility. Young seals also sometimes regurgitate their food. This is a natural thing that they do. And maybe when they were regurgitating, the seal somehow came out its nose and got stuck there. But in the past few years, they found five juvenile seals have been witnessed with eels hanging out of their nose. My favorite response to this was when I asked a bunch of kids why they thought the eel was hanging from the monk seal's nose. One of the kids said, well, it's like when you eat your saimin and you sneeze and then the noodles come out your nose. So that's a possibility also. This could have been a sneezing seal. We don't know. But a picture like this, or many of the pictures available through NOAA, through all the stuff they put out, can lead to great discussion in your classroom, okay? When I was first asked to do this, I imagined that you would all still be at home, your kids would still be at home, and that we would use the webcams of our seal pool at the aquarium to come up with a lesson. In the meantime, we have decided to renovate our seal pool, and our resident seal will be moved soon. But for now, the webcam is still up, and so you could do an easy citizens science project, like just check on Hawaiian. Is he sleeping? Check at the same time every day, see what he does. You could record the temperature that day and see if he's in the water more or on land more, depending on if it's a hot day or a cool day. You could watch him in the water and see how long he holds his breath. So if you do still have kids at home or have any desire after all this time to still look at a screen, using webcams might be very helpful. So we've included the links to 2 of our webcams on our seal pool here at the aquarium, and they are for you to use, okay? As we move to middle school and high school, there's animal tracking data by PAC IUS. And there's also many tougher topics that would be great for discussion, debate, persuasion. Just about every year, I have multiple students who are doing action papers or persuasion papers where they have to pick an issue with 2 sides, and they have to argue one side but present argument on the other. Monk seals have so many issues that are interesting like this. So in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, because there is so much predation of juvenile monk seals, they do in this protected area occasionally remove sharks from the population. It is an interesting topic, and you can see how you could argue both sides of that topic. In the main Hawaiian Islands, there are a lot of people who feed feral cats, and the reason these populations are so big is because they have people feeding the feral cats. We know that they are a problem, that they carry toxoplasmosis that is then flows downhill into the water and is transferred to our Hawaiian monk seals. So feral cat control could be a great topic for one of these papers. And then recently we've seen in the news that someone proposed the use of paintballs or sponge guns to scare seals, so shoot at their hind end to keep them away from fishing gear. So monk seals are never shy of good topics for action papers, persuasive papers, whatever the type of paper that you might have in high school. Okay. And again, there's just so much research and information out there, so they're a great topic. Okay, so as far as resources go, the Waikiki Aquarium, I'm happy to come and join your class as a speaker. We have handouts, some of which we've included, but not all. There are other places that are great resources too. So the Marine Mammal Center, which runs Keikaiola on the Big Island, if you're really interested in seals, has a program coming up for upper elementary educators. It's going to be 6 sessions held every Tuesday, March 3rd through May 4th. And you're going to learn a lot more. I could just barely scratch the surface of all the information on monk seals, but they're a great source. Again, NOAA has so much information. The Protected Species Division of the National Marine Fisheries Service has loads of interesting information on their website. There's 2 really great volunteer organizations, and both of them loosely run blogs. So if you're really into finding out about individual seals on Kauai or here on Oahu, that they both these organizations have tons of information. The Kauai Seal Watch program has a really interesting blog, and the blog on Oahu is called Monk Seal Mania, and really fun and great information. Okay, but today I decided that instead of doing a lesson plan, because I don't really do lesson plans, we bring people to the aquarium for activities or out to nature. There's plenty of other organizations that do lessons. I would teach you guys to play a game, and we call it the Monk Seal Training Game. And before I do that, I'm going to teach you a little bit more about our resident seal. So we currently have 1 seal living at the aquarium. His name is Ho'ailona, and his name translates as to a sign from the sea. He's 12 years old and he weighs approximately 350 pounds, but his weight varies throughout the year. He's what we call a rescue seal. When he was prematurely weaned when he was a pup, and he was taken into captivity, nursed back to health, and re-released to the wild. But he ended up on the island of Molokai, and he was playing with the kids, climbing on boats, and it was realized that it was not safe for him or, as he grew, the people he was playing with. So it was decided that he would be moved to a remote atoll where there aren't people, and when he was picked up, it was realized that he had cataracts or was mostly blind and probably couldn't survive in the wild. So the only reason we have a marine mammal here at the aquarium is because he can't live in the wild. And people come here all the time, and he doesn't look blind. He swims around his exhibit. He knows his way around. But every now and then you'll see a picture that catches the light perfectly that does show that he has cataracts. Yes, I know you're all thinking, why wasn't he operated on? It is really dangerous to operate on marine mammals. You never want to use sedation with them if you don't have to. And so it was decided that he should not be operated on, and that he could live out a long life here at the aquarium as an ambassador for his species. Okay. Here, while living here, he gets a little bit spoiled. He's fed 3 to 4 times a day, all restaurant quality food. And the food is so good, it's good enough for humans, but it's still not good enough for the seal. When we get a shipment of this food, we look through, we pick out anything that might not be up to our, good enough for a seal. Any of that food's picked out and fed to the sharks or the ulua or the other fish, okay? So he gets a variety of frozen food, and but because he's in the wild would be a generalist feeder, he doesn't get exactly, we don't feed a lot of lobster to our seal, so we still enhance his diet with vitamins, okay? And we do train the seals here at the aquarium. So all of their food is split up between 3 to 4 training sessions every day. And the seals are trained not to be show animals. They're trained because they have to interact with humans. The seals kept here are often part of research studies too. So for instance, we've had seals here that have been part of metabolic studies, which means we feed them a certain amount of food, we see how they gain or lose weight, and so we have to be able to weigh a 350-pound seal. Well, it's not that easy to weigh a 350-pound seal or to pick him up and put him on the scale. So the way we do it is we train him to go on the scale, and so it's safe for him and safe for his handlers. Same with blood draws. We need to draw his blood on a regular basis. So every day during training sessions, they just poke his flipper where they would normally do the blood draw. And so when they go to do it, he isn't surprised. He doesn't hurt his trainer, and he himself isn't startled by the poke. So in that light, I'm going to teach you guys how to play the monk seal training game, okay? We use operant conditioning to train our seals here at the aquarium. So that just means that the animal's behavior is influenced by the consequences that follow. So for instance, when he does something that is good, he gets positive reinforcement. A fish, a squid, maybe a cheer. Good seal, okay? Good boy, something, okay? And when he's not doing what we want, we don't spank our seals. On a rare occasion when he's really naughty and isn't doing what he's supposed to, because he likes interaction and the enrichment and the training so much, sometimes the trainers will leave the exhibit and ignore him. But for the most part, he is just trained using positive reinforcement. Okay, so for this training game, I've used it from little tiny kids. So little tiny kids and their as toddlers come to the aquarium, and I'll give their parents a cup of goldfish crackers, and I make the parents the trainer, and I dangle, the parents will dangle a little goldfish cracker and get the kids to spin or flip on the lawn, and then they get a reward, okay? And in elementary school, I'll bring out props. So things like this. This is a target, and we train the seal to put its nose to the target and to follow the target. This is how you train the seal, the difference between left and right. This is how you can teach a seal how to spin, okay? So this is really fun with younger elementary school kids to use a prop like this. And you can actually teach other words, languages. So you could teach Hawaiian. You can maybe they don't know the word huli already, and you could teach them to go in a circle and teach them words associated with the action you want. Okay. But I'm going to show you the training game as I do it for upper elementary or middle school students. Okay. And I brought in a fairly reluctant seal. Since it is a pandemic, I had to bring in my daughter. And so she is the seal I'm training. Normally you would have one child from your class join in, and all the other people in the classroom would be trainers. So if the seal does what you want the seal to do, you would give it positive reinforcement by clapping, okay? The important thing about the training game is you can't use words, okay? So you try to train your seal to do an action using only positive reinforcement, clapping. If the seal isn't doing what you want, you're quiet or you ignore the seal. And you're gonna see this this seal, as she came in, did a fairly complex activity. That's because the seal and I have slight bit of ESP, and when I gave the seal an easy activity, she guessed it right away. So I had to go a little diabolical on her and make it really hard. But you wouldn't start with getting a seal to try and do a complex multi-step activity right away. You would get to that later. Okay, so anyway, so this is the monk seal training game. And I'm gonna have Cindy show you the video now, and then we'll come back after the video. So imagine a classroom full of cheering kids. It would be much funner than, more fun than just me and my daughter in a classroom. Okay, okay, Cindy, can you play the training video?
Yes, will do. One moment.
Today I'm going to teach you how to play the monk seal training game. At the Waikiki Aquarium, we use positive reinforcement in order to get our seals to do the behavior we want them to do. When the seal does the action or behavior here at the aquarium, they get a squid or a fish, or sometimes praise as a treat. I'm not going to use a real seal today. I brought in a substitute. This is Quinn's seal. And because seals don't understand English, I'm going to train her using positive reinforcement, clapping when she's facing the direction or going in the way I want her to go, or touching what I want her to touch, as positive reinforcement. When she's not doing what I want her to do, I'm just going to stop and ignore her, and she's going to try and figure out what I want her to do. Okay? Seals don't understand English, so Quinn does understand English, but we're pretending she's a seal, so we're only going to use positive reinforcement. All right, so I'm going to take her outside and put her in the closet for a second, and I'm going to show you guys what I want her to do. And then I'm going to bring her back in and train her to do an activity without using words, just positive reinforcement. Okay, here we go. Okay, this one is hard. Okay, so our seal's going out one last time. Okay, this is what I want her to do. Okay, seal, come on in. Kind of like a hot and cold game. You're cheering when they're facing the right direction or doing what you want. If this was in a classroom setting, I would have her use the whole classroom, and all of the students in the classroom would be trainers, and you would have one seal. That's why it's an exceptionally good game. You don't need any props you don't already have in your classroom. You're making your seal do behaviors they would normally do, and the whole class can play at the same time. All of the people in their chairs can be trainers, and one person can be a seal. All right, thank you for playing the Hawaiian monk seal training game with us today. Thank you, seal. Okay, so that was one version of the Hawaiian monk seal training game. And if you have older kids, high school age kids, I highly recommend the book Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. She was actually a trainer at Sea Life Park many years ago and has gone on to a career studying positive reinforcement training. And today, you might know with our seals, we use whistles and or clickers. And if you have a dog, you may also use a clicker for training. And a lot of clicker training and positive reinforcement training and just these techniques came from Karen and her experience. So in high school, you can really train people to do hard things. Another thing about that video is, yeah, let them suffer a little bit, make them try different things. It gets really, really fun. You can actually train them to do really hard multi-step things. So the directions to play that game are also in the handouts, and it's, you know, it's a little out of my normal biology activities, but it's great to have a fun, easy activity to play with your students. It doesn't take any extra equipment. So anyway, that's it. If you have any questions about anything, if you put them in the chat, I will get back to you later. Please check out the handouts. I'm not going to go to the YouTube videos of our seal pool because we are I'm at the end of my time. But if you do want to check out the live webcams on the seal pool, as long as Ho'ailona is still in there, those links are also included in the stuff that you will be sent, or you can just look up Waikiki Aquarium webcam. All right, so I hope that you learned something about Hawaiian monk seals. I hope I gave you a little game you can play with your students, and any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, thank you, Mary. That was wonderful. And your game, there's so many psychological things you could do with that. I'm going to definitely use it on my staff when we get back in the office. But I want to thank you and the Waikiki Aquarium. I know the monk seals is just the tip of the iceberg of what you do there and what you teach about. So we will put Mary's email probably somewhere in the chat box or into the Google links so folks can email her directly. I saw a lot of great questions about monk seals. So clearly there is interest about that animal. And is that another game you have?
I forgot to take this out. I included oops, I have it upside down. I'm sorry, Alan, but I forgot to show this. There are directions to make this puppet, a printable puppet with instructions, and this is that you can make with your students also, along with some of the other handouts I included. Forgot that. Thanks, Alan.
No, that's great. Again, Waikiki Aquarium is just a treasure trove of great information. And of course, when they're open, if you haven't visited, you should go back and visit. So Mary, thank you. And we are now going to move on to our next speaker, which is Patty Miller. And she is our educational coordinator here at the Humpback Whale Sanctuary. And of course, because we're a Humpback Whale Sanctuary, it's obviously her talk is going to be about humpback whales. So I just want to introduce Patty. She's got a presentation up real quickly. And just to mention again, if you put your questions into the chat box, if we don't respond right away, we do collect them at the end of the talk, and we do send them to the presenter so that they can answer the questions directly, and then we will send them back to you because we have all your emails because you registered. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Patty Miller. She is a former teacher, so she speaks the same language that many of you do on today's call. And just to embarrass her just a little bit, she was named the NOAA Employee of the Month. So for all of NOAA across the mainland United States and out into the Pacific, Patty was singled out for her work, her virtual lessons that she did this past year. So Patty, good to see you today. You're on mute, Patty.
There we go. Okay, thank you, Alan, for that kind introduction there to this to our talk today. Education has been my passion throughout life, and I assume a lot of you guys here in Hawaii have known me in the past from being in the DOE and doing things, but it is a great way to get information out to the kids, as we've all been talking about here. Mary, that was a great thing amongst seals. I learned a lot from you, a lot of fun stuff to do. And folks, I encourage you to get in and take a look at her handouts and what she can do. But we're going to move from one critter to another one, which is the humpback whale, which unfortunately I don't have a live version of it like Mary did. They're a little big for that, so that we're not able to see these guys in person here in what we're doing today. But I'm going to take you through some different activities. I want to start, though, by telling you about what the Humpback Whale Sanctuary is about. Cindy, next slide, please. We were designated to protect the humpback whales, protect the winter breeding, calving, and nursing habitat for the largest North Pacific population of humpback whales. They're really awesome critters. I am based here on Maui. We do see a lot of them. But there's a lot actually out here all over the islands this year. Cindy, next slide. We have offices or sanctuary waters, let's start with that, boundaries off of all the different islands. And you can see the red area here on each of these islands. We're going to go to the southern part of the state in a minute here, that are designated areas that are sanctuary boundaries where we are doing more protection, more education in these areas. The areas were found in the first place, kind of interesting, by flying a low plane over the waters and actually counting the whales to identify where is the biggest population of the whales here in Hawaii. And these were the areas where they seem to like to hang out most. Let's go to the next slide, which shows more of, well, here around the Maui area, you can see that Lanai is actually totally surrounded by the boundary of it. It's the only island that is completely surrounded by sanctuary boundaries. Maui seems to be, the Maui Nui area seems to be the place where they really like to come to give birth, nurse, and raise their babies at first. Big Island, you can see there's small portions of the Big Island that, again, where there were a lot of whales seen that are designated as areas. Next slide. We as the sanctuary have a couple of different visitor centers here on Maui. This is the one we have on Maui. You can see it used to be a Coast Guard station, kind of looks like it, but the lower picture shows that we are located right on the water with the rock wall there is part of a native Hawaiian fish pond. It is not a working fish pond, but is used for education, is a great education tool that we can use, both to get the kids out in the water, helping to rebuild the wall, get some cultural lessons in, and also doing some reef walks on it. Here on Maui, we usually bring in, if it wasn't a year like this year, about 2,000 kids that are mostly Maui kids down for different classes that we offer here. On Kauai, next slide. On Kauai, we also have a new, the Ocean Discovery Center that opened up about a year ago, was open about a month, and then we went into the virus and unfortunately had to shut down. But this is located in an actual shopping, the Kukui Grove Shopping Center. The lower picture shows some kids inside with things that are going on in there. So as soon as this pandemic is over, both of these will open up. On the Big Island, we do have an outreach person that sits on outreach tables. Cindy will be moving over there soon to also do a lot more work there. And then we also on Oahu, we do a lot of outreach and working with other organizations. So we're educating on all islands, but it's not only education that we do. Next slide. The main thing that we do well besides education, let's call it equal, is our research and our protection, our resource protection programs. The top picture there, they are actually attaching a tag to a whale. We have a research vessel that runs out of Maui. We also have the vessel that is the resource protection one, where they go out and disentangle the whales. There was quite the news story on this last weekend about a whale off of Lahaina area that was disentangled and hopefully swimming away healthy now and living on. But that's quite a program that we carry on both with the research and resource protection, which then gives us something to talk about education-wise. The rope down in the bottom picture was actually rope that was taken off of a whale. We have all kinds of that here that has been cut loose from the whales, different whales over the years in that program. And the picture on the left is Kamakai, which is our big inflatable life-size humpback whale. You can actually go inside it. It's a really cool, fun thing to do, except for the pandemic, we can't go inside it anymore. Hopefully that will come back and it's a great teaching tool. Mainly what we do here with the Humpback Whale Sanctuary, besides supporting a lot of the other nonprofit environmental organizations. Next slide. We're going to take a look at a very short video here that shows you a little bit more about us. Cindy, if you want to run that video. Okay, give you a little taste of what the humpback whales can do and what they look like. They're awesome critters. Unfortunately, unless you are out on a boat or have the opportunity to see up close of them, we don't get to. So teaching about the humpback whales, I had to figure out, how do you do this when you can't actually get most of us up and see these whales? Today, I am going to give you a bunch of activities that you can do that help teach about the whales. All of these activities are on the lesson plan, which is in the attachment. There's also a folder there that you want to make sure that you pull down. Click the link. I will respond and give you access to that later on here. And it will give you different little videos, different things that will help you in your teaching of it. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is give you a little bit of background about the humpback whale. I'm going to go quickly through this PowerPoint for the sake of time, but this PowerPoint is one that you can show to your kids. The link is there. You can, as you pull this up, it is actually a video presentation of this, which will have a lot more information than what I'm giving you. But just for a little background, let's go through this quickly to show you what the background information is that you're going to want to show your kids probably before you do these activities. Next slide. So this PowerPoint goes through, it's kind of a trivia questions too. Why are they called humpbacks? Well, they're called humpbacks because they hump their back when they come up out of the water. Again, with the kids, you will see more of description of what is going on. How big is a humpback whale? I think this is a great one. They are 40 to 50 tons. I love this picture, showing what a human being is compared to this whale. Very small, insignificant. I remember my son coming out of the water after surfing one day, and he said, we were terrified. All of a sudden, a whale breached right up close to us where they were surfing off of Oahu. And he said, we got out of there real fast and realized how big they were until we had that experience. Kids will relate to the biggest school bus they will take a field trip on. That is basically the length of the humpback whale. Next one. Are they a kind of fish? So these next ones kind of go through next at me, that they know they are not a fish. They are a mammal just like we are. And so this goes through the different types or things that make us be a mammal, characteristics of being a mammal. We breathe air, we give live birth, and the babies drink the mother's milk. The one question everybody comes up with is, where is the hair on the whale? Well, see those bumps on the nostril of the whale there? I call them giant warts. They're called tubercles. And out of those tubercles grows a little hair. They're not sure what the significance of those hairs are, but think that it might be something that they sense things with it. Don't know, but it's the hair on the whale, so they do have hair. Otherwise, that skin is you don't feel the hair there. Next one. They breathe air. They have 2 blowholes. Humpback whales have 2 blowholes. Dolphins have 1. Humpback whales are baleen animals. The dolphins are toothed animals, and that's what makes the difference. This is kind of fun to do. If they're diving down underwater, obviously they're going to have to close their nose. You guys dive down underwater, you're going to have to hold your nose closed, or you can't keep that water from going in. So challenge the kids to, can they close their nose, their nostrils without touching them? Can't do it. Okay, next one. The babies drink the mom's milk, and this has always been kind of fascinating to me as to how the babies know what to do when they're ready to nurse. There's actually a slit on the underside of the whale, and the babies will go up to that slit and they'll bump that slit, and the milk will just pour out of that slit and into the baby's mouth. Obviously, whales do not have nipples, and so, but how does the baby know where to go punch that slit? Fascinates me. Next slide. Like I said, there's a lot more information in the actual presentation on the video that you're going to watch on this. Where do whales come from? Where did we come from? So this is a theory that they think that the closest living relative is the hippopotamus at this point. There's theories that one time the whales were land animals, they were dogs. It's something evolution that you might have your kids go in and take a look at and see what they can come up with of ideas of this. Next slide. Spotting the whale in the ocean, there's several ways you can do this, and it's by seeing, go ahead, Cindy, the 3 Bs. You've got the blow, you've got the body parts, and you've got the breach, okay? As you're looking out in the water, if you're out on the shore looking for the whales, the main things you want to look at are some of these actual, oh, I'm sorry, let me take a step back. The blow, this blow can come out of the water at up to 300 miles an hour. You see the steam that is coming out of there. That is something that the scientists actually collect. They call it whale snot, and they are taking DNA samples from that. They have a little a drone that flies over them at this point and collect that. They call it the snot bot. What a name. Kids love this part. They used to have when they first started collecting this, they had a long pole with a cup on the end of it, and they would hold it out over the whale and collect what they could of the moisture from that, and is part of the research. Next one. And the next one, we got the body parts. And so if you bring this up, Cindy, this is all of the different body parts here that you will see coming out of the water. You'll see the pec fins, the tails, you'll see the head come up, the spy hop, and you will see the head lunge. These males are actually fighting in the water here. It's an interesting story that the whales are fighting over the female. The whale that's in the front is a female. These guys are fighting over this particular female. There will be more whales underneath. That one of these 2 guys will win this battle. One of them will swim off. The other ones will come up from underneath. Another one take its turn, kind of survival of the fittest. And in the end, it's kind of the female that goes, okay, I like you, or I'm just not interested, and she swims off. So it's the female that kind of makes that decision there. Next slide. And then if you're lucky, you're going to see this breach, which is awesome. This is one that you could do this from a swimming pool. I'd love to see a video of you doing this, or you're from the beach. 45 tons, they're lifting their whole body up and out of the water. How does that happen? Really strong, strong muscle down by the tail. Next one. Whale patterns, and you'll spend more time when you watch the video on this of what this is about, but each whale has a special pattern on its tail that marks who it is, and then the scientists will take a picture of it, and then they come back into the office and they try to match up those pictures of what they just took to whale pictures they have in the catalogs, and see if it's a new whale or if it's one that has been seen before. So, and this matching this one of Captain Leif is matched up with and you can find that picture that it matches to. It's that bottom left one. Different games you can play with this though by having the kids make the tails themselves. Next one. Where do the humpback whales live? Let's go kind of quickly through this so we can get on to some other things here too. We'll talk about how the whales go they migrate from Alaska to Hawaii and back and forth. And they come to Hawaii to mate and breed. They go to Alaska to feed. So this is kind of a fascinating part of how do they feed. They do not have any teeth. So what do they use? They have things called baleen. And this baleen are these plates that hang down from the upper jaw. They open up their mouth when they feed. They take in this big gulp of water and little fish and krill and swallow down. As they take in that water, the little fish and krill get stuck on those little plates of baleen on the little hairs. They then take their tongue that is the size of a car, swirl it around, and shove it down the back of the throat. As I mentioned how big that tongue is, you can imagine how big that throat is, and we're going to come back to more of that. Next one, what they eat is the krill, and this shows you what krill is. They also eat little sardines, little fish, and that bottom picture is showing you how big that mouth opens. The mouth itself is about 15 feet long. That mouth opens wide, wide open. They take in that gulp of water and spit the water out, trap the little krill. Let's go to the next one. I think it's actually a video of this. Nope. Okay, this is showing how they feed. They swim around and around in a circle, and we're going to do a demo on this. So we'll come back to this part. So let's go ahead, Cindy. And could a humpback whale swallow you? And the answer is no. The back of the whale's throat is only about as big as a grapefruit. Seems like this huge animal would have something bigger. They cannot swallow a shark. They cannot swallow a big fish. They cannot swallow a big bird. Those would get spit out. Small back of the throat. They only eat those little things. Remember, they don't have teeth. They can't chew anything up. Next one. This is a really awesome video. This is the little krill, little fish swimming around. That's the whale coming out of the water, takes that big gulp of water and fish, sinks back down again, spits out the water, eats what is left there. They go, this was actually a group of whales that were feeding together. This is up in Alaska. They do this as a group, and we're going to come back to a little bit more on this in a minute. Just wanted you to see that actual video part. Love this picture. Can you eat this many Big Macs at every hour on the hour? Don't think so. Next picture, but shows how much the whales are eating. Do whales make sounds? Let's go quickly through this, Cindy, because I'm going to talk more about this later. So let's go on through these slides. But again, just to give you guys an idea of what this PowerPoint is like. It's great background information. And like I said, there is a lot more of this that you will get in that video presentation. Okay, next one. And next one, let's just keep going through this. Okay, what we're going to do here today is to talk about, give you some ideas of some actual activities that you can do that will help teach about these particular whales. Again, you want to make sure that you click on that special link of the folder of materials that will go along with a lot of this. So a few of these activities we're going to do here through a PowerPoint, and then I'm going to show you some live things here in the studio. So next slide here. One fun activity to do is to make your whale in the playground, or we also call it the whale in the street. This is a way that the kids can create their own life-size whale. Get an idea of how big this thing is. You do this on a parking lot, on a basketball court, any hard surface that you have where a car isn't going to run over the kids. And you start by drawing a grid. If you can make it full-size whale, you want to draw the basic grid there, the squares. And I've made this one to be 42 feet by 14 feet. So each square is 7 by 7. And you divide that into 12 equal squares. A chalk line is great to do this with, or you just chalk it off. I would put numbers on each of those little squares so you know what it is, but you're not putting the drawing on there. Then you're going to break your kids into groups, depending on how many you've got, and you're going to give them the drawing of this whale, which is attached in the activities there. You're going to give them the drawing exactly of what this is. They are assigned a square. And they are to take their colored chalk, playground chalk, and they are to draw their section on that grid. You'll notice that number 1 doesn't have much to it. You might combine number 1 and number 2, depending on how many kids that you've got as to how many squares you actually give them. Little kids, I've done this with little kids. I have done this with adults. The trick is that they have to draw their portion of the whale in their square, but they also have to match up. If you're number 2, you got to match up with number 1, and you got to match up with number 3 and make that whale, that whole thing happen. So it's kind of a big group effort also. Then you color in the whale. You'll find that your little kids get very creative with their coloring in, chalking in the whale, but it makes a great example of what this is. The next slide shows you actually teachers. This was here at the Maui site. This is a teacher workshop. They were creating one of these whales. You can see the one group with the pec fins and the tail. They seem to be doing much better than the other groups as far as getting it done. But that's kind of the size of it. Shows you the size of what that gets to be, but it's a great example of it. You can do this with any animal, actually. Marine animal, you could do it with your monk seals to get the size, dolphins, anything, of just, again, making a grid, putting that picture on top of it, and having the kids do it. But again, I've done this with all ages. Don't have to color it all in if your group is not into that, but at least get the outline and you get an idea of the size of that whale. Another thing you can do, which is kind of cool, is to make an actual life-size whale tail, and that's by taking 2 twin bed sheets. sewing them together on the ends of it. So you have one long, it'd be like a sheet is about 7 feet long. You'd have 14 feet on that sheet, sew it together, draw the trail pattern on it, have the kids paint it in, cut that out, and that gives you your own whale tail to use within your classroom or within activities that you're doing. Great to know the actual size. Okay, next one we want to talk about here is whale songs. And so I stopped that last video. The video of the PowerPoint actually talks more about the singing and how it happens. We know that only the males sing. They don't know why only the males sing. Not sure why they're singing. Are they trying to attract the females? Are they looking for food? Are they, what are they doing? Are they finding their way down from Alaska to Hawaii by talking to each other? Don't know. There's a lot of research that's going on here in Hawaii about whale sounds and the whale songs. If you live in Hawaii in an area where there's lots of whales, you go snorkeling or diving, you can hear the whales underwater, sound carries underwater. And the whale songs, they're not really songs though, they're more like barks and grunts and groans. I'm going to give you some examples of this that you can use with your kids. Here at the sanctuary, we have our researchers are putting hydrophones down underwater like what you see down here in this picture. They're putting them down, they're leaving them down underwater, and they're recording devices, and they're leaving them down for several weeks and several months actually, and collecting all the sounds that they hear of anything that's swimming close to it. They're trying to find out what they can learn about the whales. And of course, they're picking up every other sound. There's shrimp, there's all kinds of animals that are making sounds too. But they're trying to determine, are there whales in this certain area? How many there are? What are their movements? Things that are deep that they're going, etc. And so they bring these devices back up to the surface, and then they listen to the recordings that's inside these. And these poor interns are sitting there with their earphones on, listening over and over again to these whale songs, trying to decide, is it the same whale? Is it different whales? How can they tell the difference? So we're going to give you an activity here you can do with the kids. Next one. And you want to start by thinking about how you might analyze these songs. They make professional spectrograms, which records the movement of the sounds and what's going on. If you guys are, especially elementary teachers that have taught music, you've taught music patterns of, having the kids clap the pattern to the song. So that first line is a song that every one of you knows. See if you can figure out what are those little dashes, what is the song that is there. I did it to some staff here and they didn't get it, so it might be a little harder than what I thought. But it's actually jingle bells, jingle all the way. So that those dashes are representing the sound and where the song, I'm not a good singer, the song should have gone up the tones, it would, the spectrogram would make that change. The diagrams from a whale song is going to be like that bottom drawing that you're seeing there. You're going to hear swoops and they're going to hear boom, 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 boops, and you're going to hear these different sounds. As you do this with the kids, have them design or draw the sounds that they're hearing. Put in if it's a long swooping sound or a short click, 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 or whatever as it goes through it. I have some examples here of some whale songs. These are recorded and these recordings are actually in that folder. I keep talking about this folder that you can take and use with the kids. So let's listen. What I want you to do is see if you can draw these patterns as you listen to it. And see my friendly whale here is going to sing for you and record just a little bit of this pattern. We're just going to do a little bit of this with different, a couple of different sounds to see if you can decide, are these three whales, the whale songs from the same whale or different? So let's listen here to number one. You might need to turn your computers up a little bit. Okay, let's stop number one. I don't know if I'd call it a song. There's kind of grunts, like they said, grunts and groans. That was number one. let's listen to number 2. It takes a second or two to get into number 2. It's coming up, but let's try number 2. See if you can start a drawing of this diagram. Is it the same whale or not? All right, let's try number 3. Okay, let's stop listening to this for right now. I want to know what they're saying. What are they saying to each other? These are weird sounds that are coming out of them. Again, not a real song, but are, well, to the whales, they are songs. Again, it is only the males. If you play this longer, you'll get an idea of where these, are these the same thing or not. It's a great activity to do with the kids. We can give you more whale sounds if you want them. Just need to contact me and I can give you more than just these 3. But it is an interesting thing to look at. And remind the kids, if you're a researcher, you have to decipher those. And they sit forever. I would have to listen to those a couple of times to really decide, is that the same thing or a different thing or what it is. But it's a way that they can identify if they come up with 10 different basic songs or patterns, let's call them patterns, out of one of those hydrophone units, they can say that there were at least 10 different whales that were in that area. It helps them figure out where these whales are. There's a lot you can do some research on sound to learn more about the sound and the songs, and it'd be a good activity for the kids, but this is kind of fun to figure out the songs of the whales. Something also that I noticed when I was up in Alaska, I was on a boat and we were watching them feed and we had a hydrophone in the water. It was not the same grunting sounds. The sound we heard when they were feeding was a howling sound. It was really ghostly sound that came out of those whales as they were feeding. And the guys on the boat with us said that in the olden days, the fishermen would sleep on their boats at night, sleep down in the bottom of the boats, and they would hear that howling sound coming through the bottom of the boat. And they thought there were actually some sea monsters out there, not knowing that that was the whales actually singing. So it is a different thing that is heard when they are out or when they are feeding or not. Okay, next here. And that's the end of this part of it. we're going to come back into just the studio here. Cindy can bring me back into here. And we're going to show you a couple of different things that you can do with to teach the kids about these things. Remember, this is our whale. You got some basic information about our humpback whale and the size of it. But let's talk about that feeding a little bit more. This is an example of the actual baleen. Okay, this was taken off of a whale up in Alaska when the whale died. And you can see the little hairs that are on the side of this baleen. And this is what the whale traps that krill and the little fish and things on when it is when they are feeding. Now, a fun demonstration to do with the kids is the following here. You're going to take I'm going to take a bowl here. I'm going to fill it with water, so you can give them a bowl or a cup to use with this. And I'm going to add just plain old water to my bowl. And then I'm going to represent the food that these guys eat with some parsley. Use parsley, you could use pepper. I find that parsley seems to work the best. And I'm going to put some parsley in here so that this floats. I think you can see this. I'm going to put a bunch of parsley on the top of here. And this represents, oh, good feeding here, represents what the, this is the krill, the little fish, the shrimp, whatever it is they are going to feed from. So what happens here is that the whales, when they feed, they swim around and around and around in a circle. And as they're swimming around and around in the circle, they are trapping the little fish and krill into this swirling mass in the middle. So as we were up there watching this happen, we were seeing these whales feed on this. They swam around and around and they blew bubbles. And you can imagine, ask the kids, what's the purpose of the bubbles? Why do we have bubbles here? Well, the bubbles actually created they create a net around the outside of this. So you've got all of this, it traps the fish and krill inside. They went around and around. When they got this bubble net built all around us, they stopped. And then they came out of the water and with their mouths wide open. But before we do this, let me show you something here. If you were a dolphin and my chopsticks represent my dolphin, except let me get my fish swimming again, my krill swimming again. If you were a dolphin, you would go in and with your two teeth, you would try to grab what was there. You would see you don't get very much. Hard to catch it, especially little things with the teeth, with no teeth. But if you were a baleen whale, think about this, you've got those big plates. There's actually 200 of these plates hanging down from the whale's mouth. And so it's a lot of it. They're about 6 feet long. There's a lot of little hairs on those. You have come up a bunch to this batch of krill, and you go in there with your baleen, and you are able to catch a whole lot in one feeding thing. So again, you go in, you catch a whole lot. This comb actually represents what the baleen would look like. Okay, it's these plates that hang down. Again, the kids are feeding. It's a great way of demonstrating how the baleen works versus the toothed whale. So that's the baleen and the feeding part of the baleen. Okay, again, their directions are there. I use this as an example as the back of the throat, and this just always fascinates kids as to how does that whale, why doesn't that whale have a bigger throat? This is an example of the size of the back of the throat, and it's always like, okay, could that whale swallow you? And the answer is obviously no, that whale is not going to swallow you with that little tiny throat. Okay, another one that we can do here is to talk about the blubber. And this is kind of cool to do. You know, blubber serves a couple of purposes. One, for the whales, it keeps them warm. They go to Alaska and they eat and they eat and they eat. They eat about a ton of food a day, which you can imagine how much of that little krill they need. And they store that as fat in their body. That fat does a couple of things. It keeps it warm, but it is also a food source for them to use the whole time they're down here in Hawaii. When they're down here in Hawaii, they are not eating. We do not have a good food source for them. They might catch an occasional small fish they could swallow, but in general, they are not eating while they're here. So to demonstrate how this blubber works, this is kind of fun. This is a quart size baggie, and I have Crisco here. And I'm going to take this Crisco and I'm going to fill the bottom. You're not going to have to touch this stuff if you're careful. You're going to fill about the bottom third of the bag with Crisco. Kind of gooey if you do get messy, but you're going to put the Crisco in here. This is your blubber, okay? Then you're going to take a second baggie, and this baggie, you're going to put your hand into the second baggie. Then you are going to push this one down into here. So notice my hand is not touching the Crisco. My hand is inside the baggie, and I'm going to form that Crisco around my hand inside the baggie. Now, I would suggest that you create this baggie inside the baggie, tape the tops of these together so that you are holding these tops together here. So it's firm, you can reuse it and reuse it. You have the kids come up and put my hand in there, not get anything on it. Remember, that's the baggie inside the baggie. Get enough Crisco in your bag that you can cover your hand and then have a bucket of ice water. You stick one hand in the ice water, one hand without the baggie on it and the other hand with it. How long can you stay in the water? And it is just amazing. You do not feel that cold temperature with this blubber. It's a great example of how blubber works. But remember also, This is what the whales, their bodies feed on when they are down here in Hawaii. Their body is using the extra blubber, the meat, the food that they've actually stored in that blubber, in that fat, to survive while they are down here. So another fun one to show, to demonstrate with your kids. Okay, now we got a few minutes left here. Let's try taking, I want you to take a piece of paper, and I want you to, got a piece of paper there in front of you. I want you to take your piece of paper and I want you to fold it into thirds. Teachers, you know this is a hot dog fold, so you're going to fold it a third and a third and a third. And you get 3 separate sections to your paper. Okay, I'll give you a minute to do that. Let me pull up my board. I'm going to do this on a whiteboard instead here. Okay, let's see if I can do this on here and demonstrate this. So this is my paper that I have instead of a piece of paper. I've got it into 3 sections. So you got your drawing. Actually, this activity you are going to find also done on that same video as you're going to find that PowerPoint. Well, let's go through this kind of quickly. This time's going real fast here today. Let's draw here on humpback whale to scale. I've never been able to do this without any other animal. When I first started teaching here with the sanctuary, it's like, you got to talk about whales, you got to be able to teach about whales. So how do you do this? So let's think of this as the length of the whale. A whale, an adult whale, is about 45 feet long, okay? Let's make the body, the main part of the body is about 2/3 the length of the whale, which would be 2 of the sections. Ask the kids, what is the basic shape of a humpback whale? Well, it looks like, a pickle, it looks like a zucchini. Some kids will say a banana, but that's your basic shape. Now, the tail in each of these then is 15 feet. So each section alone is 15 feet, okay? So it's a math lesson here. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The tail represents 1/3 of the body. So the tail is going to be back here. It's about 1/3 this way, and it's about 15 feet, and it's about 15 feet that way. So let's draw a little tail on here and get your tail so it fills pretty much most of the shape of that last square. The tail normally would be turned on its side, but you can't draw it that way and get the picture, so it gives you the idea. Remember, what did a tail have on it? It's got markings that identify it as itself. Again, this comes out in that PowerPoint. Here is your markings of your whale. Gives you, that's my particular one. Designates that as, it's the patty whale. We need also the pec fins. And guess how long the pec fins are? Again, 1/3 the length of the body. So your pec fins are going to come down like this. And you got one on the other side. They do have some markings on them, but those markings don't mean anything. These pec fins they use for actually steering themselves through the water. Their main power comes from their tail on the back end. Otherwise, those pec fins are what makes them, steers them around, like your arms would do. Now, the mouth is an important part, which we talked about, the baleen in the mouth, and it's got a tongue the size of a car. How do you do that in this? Well, the mouth is going to be 1/3 the size of the body. So, kids, how big is that mouth? Again, it is 1/3, which is 15 feet. Your eyeball goes back here about the size of a grapefruit. And then you've got these pleats. They're called ventral pleats that come along here. Whoops. These pleats that come along from the mouth here all the way down through the middle of the body. And it's this that opens that mouth up. It's kind of like an accordion, where this whole jaw will open way up and come down, which allows that mouth, that tongue to move around in that mouth. Obviously, the whale doesn't, the tongue stays located in that mouth. Again, it's the size of a small car that's going to fit in there. So when that whale feeds, it opens that mouth way up, feeds, and then closes that mouth up again. Okay, we're missing blowholes. The humpback whale had how many blowholes, guys? It had 2. So one on this side, there would be one on the other side as far as blowholes. And that air will whoosh out of there at about 300 miles an hour, easy to see from shore. And the whale's hair is located in these little tubercles, which are like, I call them giant warts, that are on the top of the whale's head. So little hairs coming out of the top of the head there. I did this very quickly. Again, you'll see more of this in the video. I think you can remember this. It is written up in the lesson plan of exactly step by step. It gives that perfect drawing of the size of that whale. So now take your picture home, put it on your refrigerator. We're real short on time here. There's one other thing that I have included in your in the lesson plan. Not sure if we can make it work here or not. Cindy, can we try this and bring up? It's a Jeopardy game. Oops, that is a way to, did I get that?
Yep, I see it. You can put it in presentation mode or.
I'm not, can you see that?
Is your PowerPoint in presentation mode?
I don't think so. Let's just go out of it. We'll just go back to me. How do we do that? I stopped showing screen. Okay. Are we back to seeing me?
Yes.
Okay. So, folks, this is it's the end of what we have available for today for you of different activities. But let me go back to the Jeopardy game. Jeopardy game has a lot of good facts about the whales. One thing you can also look at is there's in the lesson plan gives you a bunch of trivia, whale trivia, and it's on our website. In that lesson plan, I lead you to our website where there's teacher information, kid information. But there are 30 facts in there, a lot of it that go along with the drawing of that whale, and you will be able to, it's a great thing to give to the kids, have them read it, learn about the whale before they get into some of this, test them then on this whale trivia. The trivia actually does a little bit about monk seals and turtles also, but it's something you can have fun for, and I think you can also probably edit that whale, or that ocean trivia to bring in other questions that you want. So a lot of fun things for you guys to do. We're out of time. I've got a lot more to share with you, but can't do it. I'm going to turn this back over to Alan, and I hope you join us tomorrow for the other two folks that will be joining us. So are we going back to Alan?
Yep. So Patty, thank you. I know you blitzed through that so quickly. Patty does this for a living. So this is just a sample of what she has available for you. I think we put her email address into the chat box, as well as a host of the other videos and lesson plans that she has done. Like I said, please join us tomorrow, same time, same place. You'll have to register. We have two great speakers, one from Papahanaumokuakea, Andy Collins and his team from Hilo, talking about a lesson from their part of the world, or their part of the program. And then we have Isabel from the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa, and they're going to be talking, I believe, about some projects you can do for recycling. So please join us for that. You see on the slide the web archive. This is where this video will be posted, as well as a lot of the other videos we have done over the past year from across our entire program. Next, Cindy, if there is any slides. So everybody's going to get a certificate of attendance. You get 1 credit hour of professional development. We'll be sending this out hopefully later today for those of you who have stuck with us throughout today's talk. Next slide, please. And we do want to know what your comments are, if you're going to be using this for your class, or if there's any other ideas you have for our webinars, please let us know. Next slide, please, Cindy. And just coming up, we do have a talk about yet another talk about Papahanaumokuakea by Dr. Brian Hawk. So please join us and register online for that. And we do have, I believe, another presentation coming up from Dr. Heather Ward about cephalopods, octopi in Hawaii. Dr. Ward is the DLNR, the state specialist on the island of Kauai, so that should prove to be a very interesting talk, and you can register for that as well. And I believe that is the last slide, Cindy. Okay, so again, please join us for tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. We have two other great speakers, and we have a guest welcome from the head of the National Marine Sanctuaries Program, John Armour. So please join us. I thank you for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.